What's up everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Custom Track Wiiki Showcase, a series where I talk about some custom content made for Mario Kart Wii throughout the month that I find interesting. Today's episode is on everything uploaded to the wiki during May 2022. Compared to almost every other month this year, May was actually pretty calm in terms of wiki presence, and so we've got a shorter episode for today. That means we have 8 things to cover in depth and 5 things to showcase for the rapid fire segment. Let's get started. To start things off, we have an upload that isn't a custom track. This is Jari Kart Wii by Metal Jari Power, a texture hack distribution with a general Pokemon theme, which was updated to version 7.0 on May 2nd. You guys might know that I myself am not that interested in texture hacks for the game, but I decided to give this distribution a try for myself, and I was actually pleasantly surprised at the attention to detail this pack had, from the textures to the distribution work itself. That's because this distribution has been in the making since 2018. Quick reminder, that's 4 years ago now, Jesus. And all the textures in this pack were made by Metal Jari Power himself. This pack comes with a Revolution download and a CTGP My Stuff download to be accommodating for users, but I just went with the Revolution pack as I wasn't sure if the menus carried over in the CTGP version. Let's start up the pack. I'm already overwhelmed. Yeah, this distribution really changes up the menus, and as cool as it is, it feels like I've committed a crime just looking at this. You're watching live footage of me actively sinning. The textures in the game are the real highlight for me personally though. Each track has its own texture made by Metal Jari Power himself, which makes for a very personable and well put together distribution altogether. There's also custom music for every track along with custom character textures, my personal favorite being Me Outfit B, which has a Link suit now. I don't think I've ever seen a custom Me texture before, so that was very neat to witness when I opened the pack. And because I got bored, I made a list of my top 10 favorite textures from the pack in no particular order. Poison Mine. This is a very neat neon-styled version of Wario's Gold Mine that looks like it takes some inspiration from Toby Fox. Very cool. Celebi's Forest. This is a Maple Treeway texture with a different season, basically. Pretty cool. Espion's Volcano. I've always wanted Grumble Volcano to be purple, and now I can die peacefully. Midnight Ruins. I also really wanted to see Dredger Ruins at night. Taken in, boys. Metal Jari Power Road. This is the most Metal Jari Power looking road of all time. Witch's Forest. This is a SNES Ghost Valley 2 texture that takes place in the forest. Put that on a billboard. Manaphy's Night Beach. I always love Shy Guy Beach textures because I've seen some that look really intense and interesting, and then you play the track and it's just goddamn Shy Guy Beach. Heatwave Hills. Jesus Christ, Heatwave is right. I feel like I'm sweating just looking at this texture. Galaxy Dimension. Bowser Castle 3 textures are always really cool to me because it feels like there are so many directions to take with something as simple as BC3. The skybox and textures here are honestly beautiful. Wishing Mountain. They put the mountain in space. We need a second billboard. So yeah, a lot of cool textures here and a lot of unique ideas as well, which is cool to see. It's really interesting to see what one guy can come up with when creating a texture for all 32 tracks. But I haven't even mentioned the best part. Check this out. Oh, I'm getting some use out of this, alright. Great stuff, Metal Jari Power, on your distribution and all your textures. The effort you put in really shows, and I wish you the best on any future textures you plan to make. Up next, we have a modern remake of a classic custom track from 2010. This is Bowser Jr.'s Fort by Mr. Fluffy, uploaded to the site on May 12th. Most of you guys that are well versed in custom track knowledge should already know the original Bowser Jr.'s Fort by Vulcanus 2, and if you weren't familiar with it, just know that it was a classic track from the old CTGP days. This was remade by Mr. Fluffy, someone who I've covered a few times on the channel before, but not for this series specifically. Basically, he's a creator who emerged in 2020, and he's made Camp Cardigan, Spectral Station, Quaking Mad Cliffs, and Super Marine World. I always love to see these newer, attention-focused creators touch up a very identifiable old and buggy track, for example, Luca's remake of Alpine Skyway back in February, and might I say, this is a phenomenal remake. Let's start off with the design because it was approached perfectly. I think the highlight of the original Bowser Jr.'s Fort for many people was the uniqueness of the design, from the beginning shortcut with the off-road and zappers, to the middle section with the half pipes, to the open, wavy, and calm finish. Mr. Fluffy not only perfectly recreated the original design with this remake, but he also improved these elements with a smoother, more pack-ready finish. The highlight for me is the middle section with the half pipes, as there's a really unique shortcut where you boost over the wall using some curved road. It's possible shroomless using the half pipe, which would add some really interesting meta to the course, similar to Waluigi Stadium's turn skip. I did fail it in the preview video, but it is possible, so just take my word for it. Everything else in the design, from the starting shortcut to the ship section to the calm turns at the end, was approached perfectly as well, and makes this one of the best tracks to drive of all time, probably. It truly feels like you could get some competitive races on this course to the same caliber of Nintendo's tracks with their shortcuts. That brings me to the visuals, which thankfully don't emulate the original as much as they look very fresh and new. The presentation is beautiful, taking after Super Mario Galaxy, and having some very childlike caricatures on the walls fitting the theme of this being owned by Bowser Jr. It's a very nice touch that calls back to the theming of the original that didn't have many indications of the fort actually being Bowser Jr.'s. The textures are all beautiful and they mesh well together visually and thematically. I really have no complaints with this track, and that accounts for the visual and the design too. The track is near flawless. There's nothing else that I'd really want to see changed in the track. It almost seems perfect already. Amazing stuff, Mr. Fluffy. You've proven yourself as a top creator once again, and I can't wait for any future projects of yours. You guys should have seen this coming. This is Midnight Museum by Squire Turnbolt, which was uploaded on the 16th of the month. I made this descriptor in the last episode, and I'm going to keep saying it for every month's video from here on out. Squire Turnbolt is the creator with the most tracks in this Wiki Showcase series, with an incredible list of tracks that he's made throughout this year alone. As you might expect, Midnight Museum takes place in a museum after midnight, with many references to Nintendo games. I must say, the theming and visuals are on point here. The dinosaur statue in the starting room, the various heads, posters, and paintings decorating the walls, the stages in the middle section showing off various Mario-related scenes, the eerie dark lighting mixed with the domed glass ceiling at the start, and the few lights in the museum making this track look stunning, along with the unique visuals and texturing, from the road to the wall textures that I've never seen before. It's a more general theme that everyone should be able to grasp instantly, a museum after closing, but I think the combination of the indoor night theme and a museum setting really sets this track apart from every other custom track. In terms of design, this track goes for something more simple and quick, but it is effective for sure. The star of the show would have to be the middle section, where you can choose between 3 paths, and they all have their own quirks and reasons to take them over the others. The left path has a bouncy mushroom landing, the middle is more of a shortcut having a boat filled with off-road that takes you through some very fast pathways in the air, and the right path is the more standard option with a really satisfying shroomless shortcut over a grass display that feels great. The other sections also feel pretty good, with the various tricks, turns, boost panels, and the shortcut to the left of the finish line. All these elements work to make this track feel very fast-paced and exciting. I also appreciate all the little details as well, which there are too many to name, but for example the mummy toad Goombas, the map of the building on some walls, and the decorations everywhere add a lot to the track's ambiance. Great job making another incredible track, Squire, and I'm looking forward to your tracks next month because I know there will be some to cover already. Our next track is an update to another CTGP classic, but this time from the same creator as the original, into a track that was more recently in CTGP. This is Hell Pyramid by Spy Kid, which was updated to version 2.0 on May 17th. I imagine most of you would be able to identify Spy Kid and Hell Pyramid as well, which was a track that was made back in 2014. That's 8 years ago, by the way, if you want to feel old. The wiki advertises this update as a major model overhaul, so let's just jump right into the track. It should be no secret that I was not a big fan of Hell Pyramid, as in the CTGP ranking I had it in like the 210s, but this is a great improvement that really brings the idea into a more modern environment. This really feels like an enhancement to the original, mostly from the changes made to the design. The ramps are noticeably better as the trend of lowering ramps continues with this track. People have realized that these low ramps are the most satisfying to use, and I 100% agree. There's also a more smooth finish to the design with less blocky modeling in places like the starting incline, for example, which is now curved. Some of the sections have seen many excess tricks and other unneeded elements removed. For example, the straight exiting the pyramid is much more simplified, and I consider that much better. And generally speaking, the spacing is much more refined in this version, and tricks don't place you right on other tricks as much. The track overall feels more fluid. Now, this track also makes many visual improvements to give this a more modern flair as well. There are great shadows and other visual enhancements to create this very vivid volcanic atmosphere. There are more modern textures used. For example, the grates look much better in this version. The track looks generally more polished with better UV mapping as another example. And the atmosphere is much more on point in this version, where it feels much more akin to riding inside a lava pyramid compared to the original, with a more artificial look in a sense that felt like it was made for a racetrack more so than this version. The improvement is impressive for sure, considering how well this stays true to the original. You can really see how much Spy Kid has improved at track creation when comparing the two versions of this track to each other, since they're pretty indicative of what Spy Kid was capable of at each point in time. This would have been an amazing update to see had the track stayed in CTGP, but this might even be getting added back depending on how the CTGP track submission process goes, since this was submitted. Awesome update, Spy Kid. Coming up next, we have Ice Cream Fortress by Citrus, which was uploaded on the 18th of the month. Citrus is another newer creator from 2020 that came out of the gate releasing great tracks like Jungle Glade, Sandstone Cliffs, and Vile Isle. You guys might remember Citrus's Overgrown Lemon Garden by Eman from an earlier Wiki Showcase, which was based on the guy that made this track. Isn't that something? This track takes place in a fantasy desert land with a section inside a fortified castle. Right off the bat, this is a track that is very Mario Kart 8-esque in its presentation, and I mean that in a good way, don't get me wrong. This looks like a track that I could have seen Nintendo make for a new Mario Kart, largely due to the length of this being around 2 minutes, which was what Nintendo was aiming for in most Mario Kart 8 tracks. But I also think the quality of the track as well results in this having a very official-like presentation, with the background scenery having very detailed modeling along with distinct ice cream visuals. Even with the track like Sweet Sweet Canyon, I could see Nintendo making another desert-themed course like this, since this goes for a different vibe and has the castle element to it. Let's start with the design. I absolutely love the fact that this feels like a Mario Kart 8 track when actually driving it. It has a really good length for a more simple track, but that doesn't sacrifice any depth in my opinion. That's mostly because there's a shortcut using the cannon where you can ride along the side of the wall when you enter from the right, which is super neat and not obvious on a first playthrough. I like that there's something to discover after you play the track for a while. There's also the shroomless spoon shortcut and the shroom cut through the donut just before that to add some meta to the outside section. The indoor section also has a neat shroomless strat where you hop trick onto a platform with a ramp to the left, and it's very satisfying to hit. Generally, this has very well placed ramps and tricks to make this feel very fast paced, but it still allows for some good player to player interaction. There are different ideas design wise between the two distinct sections, where the outside has very open ended road and the indoor section has more narrow and blocky modeling. This seems like it'd be a really solid course to time trial from how great this is to drive. That brings me to the visuals, which of course are really good. The visuals are unique, and like I said, the background elements are really nice, from the donuts to the ice cream to the flowing strawberries on the chocolate river, and even the fortress itself, which is modeled insanely well. The textures are also great and unique. Even the more general ones like the wood texture, the castle carpet, and the walls don't look typical for a castle track, and it creates a really nice atmosphere. Overall, yeah, this track is really great, another banger from Citrus, but I should note though that this will probably be Citrus's last track, as he stated in his preview video description that he is not interested in continuing to make tracks. It's unfortunate how many talented people have announced their departure this year, since it seems like there's been so many, but obviously I can't fault any specific creator for wanting to move on after some time creating tracks. Citrus did create this track using the thread system in the CTGP track testing server, and he submitted it to be reviewed by the council. I'm going to say that this will probably get a spot in CTGP, which is 100% deserved, and I'm looking forward to when it's in the pack. Amazing work with this track and all your other Citrus. You made some truly incredible tracks, and good luck on all your future endeavors. During the month of May, we saw a new competition spring up with its first episode uploaded on the 20th. That competition was Spear X5544's Spin the Wheel CT's competition, where creators spin a wheel full of track prompts and they have to make whatever the wheel lands on. For this video, I decided to cover the first place finisher of the competition, Rio Resort by Fafina. Fafina is a creator who uploaded his first track in early 2022 and has put out a couple pretty solid tracks that I was considering both covering in my other episodes, but I didn't have enough space for them. This track is his grandest so far, taking place in the harbor of Rio de Janeiro, and it features a city with a beach and piantas. This track has a very vivid and realistic feeling theme, being more tropical and in a city atmosphere. That's emphasized by the nice textures with the wood, road, and grass looking nice, and it's also emphasized by the great lighting with shadows and other visual enhancements to create depth and more realistic visuals as well. I have to say that the design is probably my favorite part of the track though, as this really has a neat progression. It goes from a narrow city section to an open-ended beach section, back to another city section, and is topped off with the climactic cannon over the same open beach section. I think all these elements really flow into each other to create a very natural progression throughout the whole design. The track is smooth to drive with well-placed tricks to make this feel fast-paced, but without an overabundance of boost panels to ensure that there will be good player-to-player interaction still. There's a decent amount of obstacles in the model to keep racers on their toes, mainly the square wall area right before the cannon to add a little bit of spice to the design. I do really want to highlight the world building though, as it's truly something special. I can't put my finger on it, but this is a pretty unique approach in putting the whole track together, and it's become a pretty distinct style for Fafina to have throughout all his tracks. This is in a beta version currently, which is understandable considering this could be more polished in the future, but as it stands, this is a great starting point to create a really solid track, and I'm looking forward to any future updates assuming Fafina will want to come back to this track. Great stuff. The Spin the Wheels CTs competition wasn't the only competitive event that debuted this month though. That's right, we also had the first Custom Track Jelly competition with the results posted on the 24th. The CT Jelly competitions are basically just CT Jam competitions hosted by the same team, but the difference is that they have crazier twists and themes. Basically, this jam had the twist that you can have as many creators as you want, but the number of people on the team has to be the same as the number of split paths in the track. Don't get it? You'll figure it out soon enough because I decided to cover the first place finisher of this competition, Elemental Solstice, which was made by Birj, _, Lucio Wins, Shorky, Hamburger, Kiwi Power Green, and Elemental. Hopefully the intense design that you're watching makes more sense to you now. This track has a snowy cave theme essentially, and the authors were kind enough to give the split of who did what for the track to complete it. Bear and _, or Dot were the main modelers to the track, which I would have guessed otherwise just based on what the track looks like, since this looks very Bear and Dot-esque. Very curvy, smooth modeling, which has become a trend in many new custom tracks, especially by these two. It works perfectly for a track like this though. Let's start with the visuals here actually, since there's probably something you guys have picked up right away that is incredibly unique and beautiful. The cave animation. The blue panning that lights up the designs on the wall and on the road, and yes, it's incredible. It's super impressive that this group thought of this idea and got it working within the time constraints that this competition had. The track also has two distinct sections, one in the cave and one outside, and the outside also looks pretty good. It's a more standard snowy section, but it still looks amazing for custom track standards, not to mention that the lighting and texturing still makes this section look unique in comparison to most other custom tracks too. This has a great visual experience along with good shadows, vertex coloring, and other visual enhancements to make this track truly pop. That brings me to the design, where we see this very intense layout with layers and many pathways, but I also think the track is surprisingly intuitive. At the very least, it seems easy to pick up, but with a ton of depth, which is how I like my custom tracks. This is also very long, which I think suits the grand visual style, since this would be a track that would be in Nintendo's Special Cup or near the end of their Nitro offerings had they made it for sure. The outdoor section is probably my favorite, with the distinct pathways, one having the boost ramp and half pipes, one with the penguins on the faster path, and also the more simple path with well-placed ramps and boost panels. This whole track is incredibly well put together and is super intense for a competition track. I guess that's all thanks to the original CT Jelly prompt encouraging creators to do something as grand as this. Overall, the Jelly was nice with many great tracks, but this one in particular sets the bar really high. It's going to be hard to reach this level of quality in the next competition for sure. I will say that if you plan on playing the track, be wary of the visuals as they blend together a bit from the walls to the road along with the off-road in both sections, but if you're attentive, you'll notice the difference just fine. Again, this is incredibly well put together, especially for a track that was submitted to a competition with 8 author credits. Incredible stuff, everyone. Our last track for the main segment of the video is another Crash Team Racing inspired track, but by a different author this time around. This is CTR Ruse Tubes by Reese, which was uploaded on the 28th. Reese was the creator I talked about in January's episode with his original CTR ported track, CTR Crash Cove. This is a very similar track, being a port of a different course from that game. Ruse Tubes to be specific. Let's just jump into the track. For how simple the original is, it's actually impressive how unique this is visually and design wise. If we start with the visuals right off the bat, the pulsing animation going from transparent to opaque in the tube section looks amazing. The water effect displayed on the road in the tubes, along with the textures in each distinct section, also add to the visual intrigue and uniqueness. This feels made for a racing game solely from its presentation. The atmosphere is visceral, from elements like the torches and the bones in the cave, to the background areas surrounding the pipes that are more detailed than Koopa Cape. Yes, I'm getting this passionate about Mario Kart Wii custom tracks, mind your own business. The visual enhancements like the slight shadowing and the vertex coloring, I believe, also do a lot to aid this vivid atmosphere. The visual presentation is immaculate. That brings me to the design, where we see a very simple layout, but this track would have a place in distributions to counteract the tech-heavy courses for sure. It makes sense to use a track as detailed as this one for a simpler opener to a distribution. This track serves a very similar purpose to Luigi's Circuit as a track with a large cut at the end of the course where you have to swerve around a lot of obstacles. But this track is definitely much more developed everywhere else, so I imagine packs would be split up much better online for better races on this. This is a very solid track to drive and would be fun to time trial for sure, as one with less room for error. But yeah, not much else to add for this one. It's simply a solid course that would be fun in distributions as the necessary shorter track. It serves its purpose really well. Good work, Reese, on the great port. If you're focused on the Crash Team Racing series at the moment, then I'm looking forward to more of your ports in the future because the tracks have been turning out really good in Mario Kart Wii. With the main segment out of the way, now it's time to jump into our rapid fire segment. Again, if you aren't aware, this is the part of the video where I give some quick recommendations to tracks and other creations that I didn't have much to say on but were still quality offerings that deserve to be seen. Let's get started. Meteor Metropolis 1 by Crystal Moon Kitty Cat. This is the first of 3 tracks uploaded with the same theme by the same author, taking place in the same setting with different bite-sized designs. I was actually familiar with Crystal Moon Kitty Cat before this month, as they did this type of track series release once before with their Fall Flash series that I covered in a scrapped CT review episode. Meteor Metropolis 2 by Crystal Moon Kitty Cat. The first track flies over the city on a metal grate path through a wooden bridge, the second track goes through an underground path with many boost panels, and the third track takes the same metal grate path over the city as the first, but with a different turn and descent, resulting in a slightly different and simpler layout. Meteor Metropolis 3 by Crystal Moon Kitty Cat. I think this is a pretty nice way to go about uploading slightly different tracks by just making them different files and giving them completely different layouts. Having bite-sized tracks in the same setting is a neat concept, and all these tracks have the same nice purple tinted visual style in the city. The first is probably my favorite as it has the most going for it, but I think this series could use one major track that combines all the pathways either in a one-lap track or by making each pathway possible on a different lap through campy elements. Obviously, this approach is nice as well though. Tour New York Minute 4 by The Gaming Bram. Again, I'm not really familiar with Mario Kart Tour as a whole. I was aware of the New York Minute original track, but I had never seen this design before I tried this track out. You basically have to do 2 laps of different tracks for each lap, which I think is very innovative and cool. There's a lot to this track and it's fun to drive with a nice simple visual style. It also has some nice touches like the spouting water object and the arrow animation. It would be cool to see a very polished remake of this track, as this is just a port, but this is still very cool to see in the game and it's fun to play. SMG Honey Hive Galaxy by The Veil. I already talked about this track in March's episode, but this track was updated to Beta 3 with some model change-ups, which I suspected would be the case from how this track was framed on the wiki. Basically, the uphill with the flower is much nicer after the 270-degree turn. I believe the section after that is a little wider to accommodate for better racing, and the cannon section was simplified and redesigned to reduce the cannon number to 1, with some road extending outward from the tree. The transition into the tree is also really nice. Really solid update from Veil, and as I'm assuming there will be more changes in the future, I can't wait for what he has planned for this track next. Bouncy Cheddar Cheeseway by Dot. This track is pretty self-explanatory from its title. It's a racetrack comprised of cheese that is bouncy. It has a pretty simple design but a very nice visual style, and it's very fun to drive. Good for time trials most likely. I will say I wish the out of bounds was removed on the last bouncy cheese part at the end to allow for a shroom shortcut. It would add some really interesting meta at the end and would be a nice difficult cut. Otherwise, this is a solid, simpler course. DSDK Pass by ZBL. ZBL really said, you know how I made the best version of DSDK Pass on the Wii? Well, I'm not a fan of it anymore, so I'm gonna remake it from scratch. And somehow it worked. I believe he said he wasn't a fan of the topography in the last version, which would correlate with how smooth the track is when driving on it. I already praised the last version for being so smooth, but this takes things to a whole nother level of smooth. It's just like me for real. Hello ladies, ha. This is very nice though. If you are a fan of DK Pass, try this one out for sure. And with that being said, let's move on to the last part of the video, the awards. The award for the best update of the month is gonna go to Hell's Pyramid by Spy Kid. There were some great updates this month, but this one truly went above and beyond, modernizing the track while staying true to the original, so that's why I had to pick it for the best of the month. The award for the best Meteor Metropolis of the month is gonna go to Meteor Metropolis 1 by Crystal Moon Kitty Cat. Crystal Moon Kitty Cat really captured the Meteor Metropolis vibe better than anyone else in their tracks this month, but I have to say that the first version was the best in this scenario. The award for the best visuals of the month is gonna go to Midnight Museum by Squire Turnbolt. The creativity and the custom texturing and visual ideas add so much to the track, and really shows why Squire is a beast when it comes to visuals. The atmosphere is so vivid and the track overall is wonderful. And finally, the award for the best custom track of the month is gonna go to Bowser Jr.'s Fort by Mr. Fluffy. This title could have gone to many other tracks this month, but man, this track is basically perfect and appeals to both my track creation side and competitive side. Amazing stuff again, Mr. Fluffy. Alright, and that's the whole video. Hopefully I was able to make a better bite-sized episode this time around, since this month was probably a breather for many creators. As always, the wiki links and YouTube pages for all the creators I covered are in the description if you guys would like to support them. If you're listening to this, then my man or my woman, or my human. Give this a damn thumbs up so that YouTube can see that and be like, oh, you think this is a good video? We already know your taste in videos is great, and because of this, we'll recommend the video to more people with great taste in videos. And subscribe as well if you plan on enjoying more of my videos. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.